really want to dive into what we're seeing with the NAR conversations because now it's been out for a few weeks. You know what I'm saying? Like now it's been out there and it's kind of been digested. So I want to see kind of I've had multiple conversations with clients, with real buyers and real sellers about this. And I'm sure you have as well. And I want to let's take this moment that we have together and really just dial in to be like, what are we hearing? What are we feeling? And then what's the best move we could make right now to accelerate our business moving forward? I'd love that to be the focus for the call, if that's cool.
Yeah. Do you want me to give a comment of what I've seen?
Yeah, I want to see what you see.
I had one client who wanted to not offer any compensation, and then I explained to them how the commission could be a marketing tool. Do you want to hear more? And then you said yes, and I showed them how really we're going to attract a lot more people if we with agents who are going to try to get us the money we need. Otherwise, they have to try to dig it out, and it's a lot more of a pain point to dig it out of
Sure.
your own buyer than it is out of the seller. So I had one listing that basically said, all right, let's do that then. After they were adamant about not paying because they read something somewhere.
Let me ask you this. I'll ask you this in this way. Would you agree from a retail standpoint, real estate transactions in our area, over 90% typically involve two agents, not just one?
Yeah,
How
absolutely.
how much truth? I actually got those stats from the from SAR and from NAR that like, it's 90% I think is very justifiable. But I would argue to say from a retail standpoint, properties in our market right here in Southwest Florida, on Suncoast of Florida, I would almost argue to say 95% of those are offering some sort of compensation to a buyer's broker. What I've said to sellers before, and I've said it all this week and everything is, listen, is we're about to put your house on the market. And my job is to not only market your property to the end user, the buyer of the home, but my job is to market it to all the agents that have buyers to your home. So from a compensation and cooperation standpoint, if 95% of the homes that are sold in our area involve a buyer's representative or another agent, it would not be in your best interest, Lachek, to offer no compensation. Because now we're feeding into that 5%. Our job is to get your home in front of the biggest pool of buyers, including the buyers that I can bring in and the buyers that my relationships with the agents can bring in, because that is going to set the market price of your home, ultimately bringing you the highest offer that is possible in this market. I say that all the time, and it's true. Like I wanted to be clear about that. Is there anything that I said right there that you would disagree with?
No, absolutely not. In fact, I would also add that if I'm talking to a seller, I say, every 2 weeks I go to IAS's Realtor Pitch Hour, which has been going on for 20 years.
Right.
And we meet in the morning. There's between 10 and 30 agents at any given time, and we all pitch our listings. And last week was the first week where everybody that pitched, which was a lot of people, pitched with an agency compensation. Nobody had, oh, it's negotiable. Not even that conversation, which is
Right.
probably where most people who are reading the headlines are thinking. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, everyone is still offering this. So you would do yourself a great disservice by not offering it.
So, from a standpoint of us representing sellers and us being able to do our job at the highest level that we can do that job at, it's our job to market this property to the biggest pool of buyers out there in its best way, presented in its best light That's what we're looking for, right? And so I mean, you could go on the whole other end of it as far as like if there is a seller that's just not willing to cooperate, like they are just stronghold, guess what? Those sellers are the sellers that are probably, not going to work with that much. Does that make sense? That is truly like a for sale by owner at some point. And I'll add this. Do you know why network marketing works so well or pyramid marketing works so well? It's because not only you're appealing to the person, but you're appealing to the network of that person. That's exactly how it is with real estate. If 95%, and I say it all the time, 95% of the transactions are done with more than one agent, and that involves a cooperating commission. Why on earth would you want to put yourself outside of being included in that box? Like what that is a completely disservice to you because we know, and and I will tell you this right now, I'm not trying to brag, but I got my economics degree from University of Florida. And from an economic standpoint, supply and demand is readily available in this market. So literally, if you are not, our job as agents is to be able to put our house to create the most demand for that house, aka put that in front of the biggest buying community. If we're going to do that, that's what's going to drive the price up. And that's what's going to give us what we call market value, because the market value of a house is what someone is willing to pay for that house today. Like, I'm so convinced that this is right for our sellers that, like, that's why I say this. Sherry, what are you seeing in the market right now? What are your conversations sounding like?
Well, Pam and I have a new listing that just went live today, and the gentleman, through all the conversations and getting everything prepped and everything, he hadn't said anything. And then the last time we were with them, um,
Yeah.
he was in town and getting the property ready. He mentioned it to us. He's like, "Well, I've been reading a lot about this NAR thing and these new laws," and we're like, I think, and Pam, obviously Pam took the lead on that because this is my first time being involved in something, on this level. So it's, learning experience for me. But I mean, I would have felt comfortable taking that conversation and explaining it. Like, I think there's so much out there on social media right now, that, these are new laws. They're new laws. They're not laws, right? And that's the misconception that's being put out there in everyone's mind, that these are new laws. So I think it's just educating. He was totally fine when he understood. Pam just,
Yep.
Pam explained to him the 2 points that you had made. Just how these affect, you know, the buyer and the seller, and he was like, "Oh, okay." And he was good with it,
That's fine.
so he had no issue with it. It's extremely frustrating to me to see all the inaccurate information that's flying around out there, because oh man, I like I'm even on LinkedIn and stuff, where you would think it's a professional network of people communicating and networking. The inaccuracies just blow me away.
Hey, Sherry, thank you so much for that. I do want to I got to make a point right now.
Yeah, please.
We surround ourselves with, the environment of which we surround ourselves with. If we are on LinkedIn and we're on social media, and like you said, there are inaccuracies or people are complaining or venting and stuff like that, why on
Mhm.
earth, why on earth would you want to invite that into your world? This is a
Yeah,
mindset game. It really is. And the true test, and I'll share this with you from a psychological standpoint. The true test is to, time yourself. Now, I use my stopwatch like all the time, meditation or whatever it is,
yeah.
cat nap, whatever it is. I use my my stopwatch, is give yourself 10 minutes. Look at
Mhm.
it. The test is how do you feel after viewing all of that? If it
Yeah.
is a feeling of invigoration and let's go get it and stuff like that, or like I got this, or confidence, or passion, or God, I love what I'm doing, continue with that practice. If it is a feeling of fear, weight on my shoulders, if it's a feeling of like scarcity, there's abundance mindset and scarcity mindset. Like if it's a feeling of that, give yourself a moment to feel that feeling. That is the true test if anything on the external world is impacting you in a positive way or a negative way. And I've said this before on a bunch of different things. Three words, three words: guard your psyche. And my last point is, more likely than not, they've heard about the NAR thing. So I kind of like to get ahead of things. Like I like to set expectations, get ahead of things, and I'm like, and you've probably heard about the NAR, NAR settlement. If they haven't, they probably most 99% of the time they have. But if they haven't, well, I just want to let you know there was a NAR settlement. Here's my spiel, okay? I'll give it to you again. There was a NAR settlement. There was a national settlement with the National Association of Realtors that, that has changed the way we do business here in Florida. And so here there are two changes that came about. Number one, there was, before agents, real estate agents that were part of the MLS, they were able to see what the cooperating commission was in MLS. That's gone away. So you, Sherry, as a seller or as a buyer, that doesn't impact you because you had to be a licensed agent part of this community to be able to see what the cooperating agent, is offering. The
Right.
second key change, which I want to be really clear about, is before it was not necessarily a requirement to, for buyers to, or for buyers agents to be able to have some sort of agreement with buyers and showing them properties. That it wasn't. I've done it for 10 years. I've always, every buyer I'm working with, I'm committed to, they're committed to me. We have an agreement. But in our industry, that was not required. So that's another big change is that buyers that want to see a property, they're gonna have to have some sort of agreement, some sort of professional agreement in place, and that's what's changed. So I keep it at like very simple. How does that impact you? My comment's different for a buyer or a seller. So Sherry, if you are a seller, how does that impact you? How that impacts you is sellers and commission has always been negotiable. Sellers have hired listing brokers like myself to market their properties to both the end user buyer and also the real estate community that has all of the buyers. My job is not only to market your house to the end user, it's to market, have a good reputation for all the agents out there because they're buyers. Because in our market, and it's true, 95% of the homes that are sold in our market actually have, two agents involved. There's cooperating commission involved. None of that changes. So really the impact of the NAR settlement doesn't change the way we do business. Does that make sense? From a buyer standpoint, Sherry, from a buyer standpoint, no longer can, buyers call up an agent and they open up a door and show them a property, which happens a lot, unfortunately. What's required now is buyers, for an agent to be able to show a house to a buyer that's listed from another agent, that they're going to have some sort of agreement in place that shows exactly what commissions are paid, the commitment, the responsibility, the duties of the buyer's agent. What that means is moving forward, buyers, if they're going to see property and see properties listed in the community, they're going to have representation,
Mhm.
which ultimately is a great thing. So again, from a buyer standpoint or a seller standpoint, like these are all positive things moving forward. Any feedback from what I've said, any additions, Maciek?
Well, my question is about like when you're going on a listing presentation and you have a savvy seller, I kind of know what I'm doing, but I just want to see your opinion or
Yeah.
maybe some thoughts. Is I always say, hey, I'm your single agent and I'm going to stay your single agent. I know that you probably don't know what this means, but basically it's the highest level of representation. And I will show your property, but I will not represent the other side. One of the things that the NAR settlement, doesn't really talk about is when, or at least I don't know, is when we have buyers calling us directly. Do we have to show that property? I don't have time for that, right? I'm not driving to Lakewood Ranch 40 minutes away to show a property to someone I'm not going to be representing, right? That I have a reduced commission structure for if I find the buyer directly. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on that? How are you approaching your sellers? Are you staying are you going to transition to transaction like it always was at Keller Williams when we were there together? Or does Compass do it differently, or do you have your own things different?
No, that's a great question. Machek, let me clarify really quick. You have a listing, 123 Main Street. A buyer calls off of that listing from that listing.
Yeah.
And for some reason that's not a good fit or whatever. And you're asking about the representation to take that buyer to show them another property listed by another agent. Is that the case?
No, my property. Buyer
Oh,
calls me direct. They're like, we don't want to sign anything. We just want to look at it.
we just want to look at it. So
Yeah.
they called you off 123 Main Street
Yeah.
and they want to see your Machek's listing at 456 Main Street.
No, they want to see the listing they're seeing on Zillow. That's my listing. I took a
Your
listing
listing.
123 Main Street. They want to see 123 Main Street. It's 40 minutes away. I am
Okay.
representing the seller, and I'm not going to be representing. I This is part of my pitch. I will
Yeah.
not do transaction brokerage.
Okay.
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 I'm always going to be fighting for my client, whichever side I'm
1000%.
representing.
And part of fighting for your client is with all the marketing that you're doing, like you are doing a job well done with 8 people, buyers, direct buyers calling and wanting to see your listing. That's correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's
And
the
now
about that?
I'm going to say, hey, you can come to my open house, but I'm not going to show it to you. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me ask you this. So it like here's my immediate answer is it depends, right?
Yeah.
Like when
Yeah.
we represent 123 Main Street, and this is like so important in this world. If we represent 123 Main Street, we represent the seller. If a buyer calls off of our advertising, it is our duty to the seller to show that house to the buyer, whether they're represented or not. You know what I'm saying? Like it's our job to get that house sold. Would you agree with
Yeah.
that?
Yes.
If that buyer is unrepresented, and let's say you have another listing at 456 Main Street to show them, it is up to you to decide. I mean, if you have another listing, you can show that to them if they want to see it because you represent that seller. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
You represent. So as a listing agent, your job is to sell the house. And if any
Yeah.
buyers come through, represented or non-represented, you want to be able to get them access to it so they can sell the property.
Yeah. It
I
just
think,
kind of turns into it's almost like, on a $3 million listing, it's always listing agent a company, right?
yeah, yeah,
Always, like every time. But
of course.
in my price point, let's just call it 350. It's never that.
So
That agent never does it.
right. So here's the answer to that is when you are working for the seller, you're working for the seller, you're going to show that unrepresented buyer, the seller, you're going to drive out there, you're going to do what you got to do to sell that home working with the seller. If it's another one of your listings that same buyer wants to see, we're going to show them we're working for the seller. But at that point, if it is a buyer that, let's say, I know your pitch is that you don't work for the buyers and stuff like that, but I'm saying if it is a buyer that, let's say that you just don't want to work with, well, you're not going to show them other properties. If it is another ready, willing, and able buyer that you choose that you want to work with, that is when you have, well, let's schedule a buyer's consultation. Let's go through what I can provide to you. Let's go through what the dynamics legally look like, and let's move forward. What I want to portray to everybody right now is that we have a choice of who we want to work with. It's our choice. And if they're not going to be committed to us or that, or then it is what it is. But the most beautiful thing, and I'm so passionate about this, is from a buyer standpoint. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not crazy about working with buyers. I got a referral, which I'm going to give you an example in a moment. I got a referral from somebody, but if you're not like, they're not really the buyers that you really want to work with. They're not committed. They don't want to sign a list, a representation agreement. Then you have that choice as an agent, as a licensed agent, to not work with them and spend your time elsewhere. Is that helpful, Maciek?
Yeah, that is helpful. I think I just don't want to hear that I gotta go show property that's,
I know.
45
Okay.
minutes away, that people who are not willing to sign buyer's agency representation agreements, like
Yeah.
people who are straight up cold callers in this industry, the disciplined few, right? Let's call the
Mhm.
Patrick Brogley as an example. That guy is a machine, right? And Kurt Ware
Yeah.
too. These guys are not going to go and show properties because it's much more effective to sell the listings they have, to actually cold call, neighborhood prospect, and even make campaigns to
I
reach
agree.
the other agents to show it, right?
There's always going to
So
be different angles that people are going to
yeah,
be.
yeah.
I would say my comment to that, and these are such great points, Maciek. I love you so much. It's we are independent business owners. How do we want to run our business? Like we are. If somebody asks what you do, I want everybody on this call to say, I own a real estate company. I own a real estate company because guess what? You own your own business. So we get to choose where the CEO or the operations director or, chief financial officer, we get to choose how we want to run our business. And I believe from the NAR standpoint of what's happened is we even get more control over that because now it's how our license really like we can and can't do this, so this is how we operate. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
good. Awesome. Sherry.
So I have a question about that, with the NAR settlement and the buyers. So if it's now a requirement for them to sign a BBA and they don't want to, they're refusing to, then how are they going to see properties with an agent unless it's an open house? Like, isn't
Yeah.
that an absolute requirement? I mean, and if Matcha doesn't want to do it, I'm
Yep.
sure any one of us who live in Lakewood Ranch, for example, would be willing to work with him, with that buyer. But isn't the buyer required now, if they call up on a property and say, hey, I want to go see this, 123 Main Street, aren't they now required to sign that BBA,
Yeah.
regardless of who it's with?
Right. Regardless. So here is what happens for the buyer is if that buyer does not want to sign a BBA, they're going to have to call the listing agent for every property that they want to see and schedule an appointment for the listing agent to come out and show them.
But wouldn't the listing agent wouldn't they still have to agree and sign
Nope.
that? No?
Nope.
Okay.
Absolutely
So,
not. Nope. That's
okay,
the big thing. That is the
that's
big
the
thing.
loophole.
That's the big loophole, and,
Okay.
it was in a bunch of meetings, and Laura if Laura Benson was on this call, she would, she would say, "You're right, Andrew, that if you
Mhm.
represent the seller, your job as the seller is to show the buyer houses." So,
Right.
the BBA is not required if it's your listing, for
But
example.
but I just want to add to that. There's also a new showing agreement, and the
Yeah.
showing agreement is a one-time, so it's not a BBA that's truly
Right.
required. Now, will it uphold as that you basic because you showed it, you are the ones that's earning the commission because they could just
Yeah,
like use agents and hop
recurring,
around?
recurring.
Procuring, yeah, sorry.
Yep.
Is that enough as procuring cause? Well,
Yeah.
we'll see what the courts say.
Yeah. I just think, I try to keep things simple. If it is your listing, you can show any buyer that property, represented or unrepresented. If it's not your listing and you want to show a buyer a property, you got to have something in place. That's like keeping it simple. So, hey, I got something for you. I got something exciting for you. So, I got a referral from Compass the other day, and I just had a conversation right before this call, and I want to get your thoughts on this, okay? So this guy is a New Yorker. No offense to New Yorkers, but they're straightforward. They're, hey, I'm not paying you commission. I'm not that. I mean, we had that conversation, but he's a 47-year-old single guy, successful, has money, looking to buy a single family house 20 to, within 20 minutes to activity, but in a suburban area. Um, and I already told him I can't help him in St. Pete, but I can connect him to somebody in St. Pete. But when it comes to Bradenton, Sarasota, I'm totally happy to help him. I went through the NAR conversation with him because I said exactly what I told you earlier. He's like, yeah, what's this NAR and stuff? I was like, yeah, let me tell you. I was like, so if we're to work together, Sebastian, it's going to require a commitment. It's going to require a commitment on paper. My fee is 3%. And I'll tell you right now, 95% of the homes that we're going to see is going to offer some sort of compensation to me. And I said I'll be totally transparent with you. If there's any houses that we're going to see that is offering less than 3%, I'm going to let you know. And that conversation, it went well, but he was steadfast on, don't send me any houses that I have to pay any money on. As a buyer, I said, okay. I said, well, the houses that we're going to show, I will never show you any houses that are offering less than 3%. Like I had this conversation literally an hour ago before this. And so anyway, like I had a hard New Yorker that I'm talking about. He's like, I'm not paying for that. If I'm a seller, I'm going to pay the seller's portion, stuff like that. I'm not paying it as a buyer. So what I did, and with that initial Zoom conversation, is I said, all right, Sebastian, I said, here's what we're going to do. I did a full buyer consult. I said, I'm going to go ahead and get the process started and start sending you properties. But I said, here's what my request to you first. I said, I would like to spend 2 hours with you. He lives up in Riverview, Florida. I said, and so we're meeting at 3 o'clock on Monday. I'm gonna spend 2 hours because he's not totally sold on Sarasota or Bradenton. He really wants to be in St. Pete, stuff like that. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna spend 2 hours with you. If we feel like we're a good match together, let's see how we can work together. And so that was my whole conversation, my whole interaction with them is like, I really want to get to know this guy. I don't know him. I know him from Zoom and stuff like that. At the same time, I'm like, hey, let's feel it out. So I wanted to kind of get your thoughts about that. I don't have anything signed or anything like that. It's a buyer that was referred to me, so I kind of feel obligated to work with them, but I'm trying to set myself up for success. That is this going to be a good relationship or not? So give me some feedback on how I operated there.
I was just gonna say, I know that, I've been to a few of your meetings before, and you had mentioned that you want to only sign, or you would like to sign agreements and keep yourself exclusive so that you can give your customers the time of day and really give them 100% yourself. So, I mean, knowing what I know about you, I think that you handled that exactly, as you should have, and just allow yourself to see if it's worth your time or not. I mean, nothing should make you feel obligated. And I know that feeling of feeling obligated because it was a referral and blah, blah, blah.
Referral.
But, uh, you know, if you guys don't click, then why force something? So
Why
I think
move
that
forward for the
was
next 6 or 7 months?
exactly. So I think you did the right thing.
Okay. Machek.
So it's interesting because, we can't, you can't actually do what he requested. You can't not send him, not show him. Well, you can not show him, but you can't not send him properties because that don't have the 3%, because you don't know until you call, and you're not going to individually do that to hundreds of listings,
Right.
or dozens at the very minimum. So I would tell him, during the meeting, I would say something like, hey, listen, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sending you uh, homes. Some of them, it's possible that some of them are not going to be paying my full compensation, because once in a while we'll see 2.5%. But here's a question I have for you. If we were to find one of these homes that only pays me 2.5%, and I'm going to be asking you for the 0.5% out of pocket, but you pick it up for 8% off, is that going to be a problem? There's a lot of
Right.
homes selling for 10% off right now, like from
Yeah.
list price to sales price 10. That's crazy, right? We haven't seen that
Yeah.
in what, 7 years. So I would basically tell him, like, look, I can't do it up front, but once you see the home, before I show it, if it's going to be like 1% paying to me and you got to pay 2, maybe we can eliminate those manually. I'll do that. But is it going to be a problem if you, and
Right.
get him excited, get him
Yeah.
get him excited about, I love saving 10%, 8%, whatever. So, and I think most guys, being pretty logical. Is he single, by the way?
He is single.
Yeah, perfect. So, when I work with
He's a
single
financial
guys,
hot button. A financial hot button.
great. Great, right? So those guys tend to be just like about the numbers. They they
Mhm.
they have less of an opinion about a house, less of an opinion about looking good and bragging than the newlywed couple, for example,
Yeah.
right? Which they
Yep.
have to balance an emotional component. Guys are
Yeah.
usually like, show me how I can make money, you know?
Right. Right. Machek, that is so smart and that is so awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And it's true. Can I share with you? I want to kind of get to know this guy. Like I feel like I know the profile of the buyer. And the old Andrew Haddad would spend time putting him on a search and showing him property, and he has no time limit. And I would waste hundreds of hours on something like this of a maybe. But because of the NAR thing, I'm changing it up. Like the new me based on the NAR is, hey, you know what? I don't want to get myself in a situation where like this guy he's not committed. Just like Machek said, I'm not going to spend the time to send him properties online and try to verify every property that I send with him. So what I felt was necessary is I couldn't get what I could get off of the phone call with him I had or the Zoom I had. I got to meet him face to face. And I believe meeting him face to face, I can decipher if the relationship is going to be that of a good one or that of one that is going to be a struggle and not even non-committal. And so I've sacrificed 2 hours on a Monday to get with him and show him, as opposed to sacrificing 7 months of back end work on the computer, communication, showings, all that kind of stuff. Guys, that's a beautiful. I'm like so excited about the 2 hours I'm going to spend with him on Monday, because I'll know right then and there if if he's committed to me and we're going to do this right, or if he's just one of those financial hot buttons that, hey, I want the best deal. Whoever can give me the best deal, I'll work with them. Non-committal. So that's why I wanted to share that story with you, because, well, number one, that just happened, and number two, I believe that's how the NAR settlement can really benefit us at a high level from a commitment standpoint and professional standpoint.
I think Matchuk made a really good point, Andrew, is that, redirect his focus. So you're
Mhm.
redirect where he's focused more on the homes and,
Yep.
seeing properties, even if it's just a handful. If he's
Yep.
excited about a property, then that NAR, that commission is,
Right.
it's the second thing, it's
Right.
the
I
minor.
told
It's, yeah.
And Machek is point on. There's no way I can set up a system for this guy to send him properties that
Mm-mm.
are, up to 3% commit. It's not available. It does not exist. And that's not something I would ever do. So I love that as well, Machek.
Yeah.
Guys, we are a mastermind. This is freaking amazing. I love it.
I
Um,
I have a quick question. Maybe you've seen it in your
sure.
training. I haven't seen it yet. What if you get a referral or someone calls you just rant from advertising or whatever, and they've already signed a buyer's agency agreement that they're kind of like avoiding canceling because they don't want to confront that person?
Yeah.
Um, what should we be doing?
So that's a great question, Machek. Great question. And guess
Mhm.
what? That's going to happen. And that's where the attorneys out there are getting all excited. Hey, we get excited. We got a case. But the conversation I would have with you, Machek, if you are a buyer, you've signed a exclusive buyer brokerage agreement, and we're here today, and you want to work with me, and the value and stuff is the most important thing, Monchek, is, you don't want to be on the hook for, you know, paying more than you have to, right? Like, if you have two agreements, you would be on the hook for that. And I never want you to be in that position. So it's important for you, if, to be able to dissolve that agreement, end that agreement if you want to move forward with me. But I would never move forward with you if you have another agreement, because I treat everyone as family, and I would never want my family member to be on the hook to pay commissions on to two different agents on a single property. It's unheard of. So I know it's
Right,
painful.
right. But on a listing agreement, if
Mhm,
I contact one of your sellers, right? Or they
mhm.
reach out to me, okay, because they're not happy with you.
Oh,
I
okay, okay.
say, I say, hey, I can't do anything. You need to go cancel that agreement, then we can talk. Okay, then I can do a CMA for you. Then I can go and talk to you about listing your home. I'm not allowed to converse with your clients that are currently signed as sellers that are signed with you. But and that's a ethics violation. That's financial repercussions, right? And then possibly you could be on the line of losing your license. I
Okay.
could be on the line.
I thought you were talking from a buyer standpoint.
I am. I'm illustrating the fact that a
Understood.
seller right now is very protected, right?
Oh,
As
yep,
soon as they
yep,
sign, boom, no cold callers calling them anymore. And
yep,
now on the other hand, it seems like the buyer's agency, even before the NAR settlement, it was just like a piece of paper. And it's like maybe it'll end up in court, maybe not, but no one's going to go sue you unless the commission's really worth it. Okay.
right,
On,
correct,
on a $4,000 commission back in the day on a $200,000 home, nothing would be, it wouldn't be worth it. So,
right.
but now that post NAR settlement, is that to be treated like a listing? It sounds like it
Okay.
is. It sounds like
Well,
you listed the buyer.
yeah. Here's what I would say to that. You bring up such a good point. I appreciate that, Machek. Here's what I would say to that, and I will preface with I am not an attorney. I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm not, the broker of Compass, all of that. But here's what I would say that taking into account the seller standpoint, which is what you were talking about before, it is correct from an ethics standpoint. If a seller is listed with an agent, I cannot go out and prospect or call or meet that agent, meet that seller knowing that it's already listed with an agent. But if that seller contacts me, which is it's happened before, the seller has contacted me and they are on the market with another agent, that's a different story. If they've reached out to me, just like attorneys have the same rule. The agent has to the client has to reach out to them. They can't reach out to a client. So from a seller standpoint, if a seller reaches out to me and is asking me questions and stuff like that, I can talk to them. I can freely talk to them. And my advice to them would be, well, the first thing, if you want to move forward or have a meeting, if you want to have a meeting about selling your house, the first step is to notify your agent that you're canceling the contract. That's the biggest thing. So let's look at it from a buyer standpoint, right? So let's transfer over to the buyer standpoint. Again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a broker, I'm not, giving you legal advice. Here's how this would probably work. I believe it's going to be very similar to the seller standpoint. If a buyer is out there and they've signed an exclusive buyer brokerage agreement for 6 months with Joe Schmo over there, and so they're under contract officially, and a buyer calls me, or a buyer walks into the open house, or the buyer somehow gets a hold of me. I believe I'm free to talk to that buyer, and my advice would be the same. If we want to have farther discussion, you're going to have to, notify your buyer's agent with your contract, make sure that's canceled before we talk about moving forward together. So I think they're very similar at the same, but taking a high ethical approach is is my guide. That's my North Star all the time. That's the high ethical approach. Would you agree with that?
I agree. However, um,
There you go. I love it.
I don't like that I don't like that as a buyer. Like I may sign with, the agents, but I might sign with someone and be like, holy crap, this person does not know what they're doing and they don't have the proper support that I need, because every single question I ask is with a I'll get back to you, right? And then I met this guy Andrew at the open house who's like wowed me. Um, and now this beginner agent, this newbie agent, won't let me out of the contract because guess what? We need to sign off on letting him out of the listing agreement. Why wouldn't we have to sign on the buyer list?
Yeah.
And there's going to be hoarders. There's going to be buyer hoarders out there who are going to
Yeah.
be in the business of lawsuits. They're going to sign you up and sue you,
Yep.
sue the
I
agent.
know. I know. Guys, there's going to be a lot of things happening in our industry. I would say there's two things I would love for you to take away from this call. Number one is the ethics of what we do is so important. If there's any alternative motives and stuff like that, I've always, in almost 20 years, I've been very conscious and aware of, like, I just know that if I do the right thing, I'm gonna have less hassles and less stress and less lawsuits and stuff like that. And knock on wood, I've had no lawsuits or anything like that. But if I am just aware and conscious that every action I take as a real estate agent is at the highest ethical level, it's gonna make my life easier. Not only is it the right thing to do, but, like, if I'm the owner of my business of real estate, it's gonna make my business easier. And it has. So important. That's number one, being highly ethical. The second one is just given a good standard of service is like, who do I represent? Because there's a lot of, you raised your hand, Bettina. Oh, no. Oh, yeah. I was going to say standard of service because if you have a high ethical standard, but then you also have a high standard of service for your clients, then the truth is you're not going to fall into the traps of agents that are doing things that are unethical and stuff like that. Like, it's just a standard. And there's so many things from a contractual standpoint. I got an offer on one of my listings last night. I got it under contract, but the offer was a little, it had some sneaky stuff in there. But I had this, like, oh, here's the second thing. The second thing, and truly, is I had my client's best interest in mind. That's the second thing. I forgot. So number one is a high ethical standard. But then at the same time, I kept it really clear that whoever I'm representing, like, I had their best interest. And that's what caught a lot of mistakes the buyer's agent had presented to my seller last night. And I was like, I kind of put myself in their shoes. I was like, hey, like, they had a VA addendum that was signed and everything, but didn't have a cap amount. Like the seller could have been on the hook for $50,000. There was no cap amount. And like, because I took the stance of like representing the seller or my client, I put myself in their shoes and I caught that right away. So I'd say those are the two big things is having a high ethical standard of service. Not only is it the right thing to do, but it's going to make your life easier in the long run. But it's also keeping in mind and awareness of who you represent in the transaction. That will answer 90% of the questions you may have with the transaction. Is this in my best interest of my client or not? Is this or not? So anyway, I wanted to share that with you, but I thought that was really important. Cool. Hey, I wanted to let you know, so yesterday I had another buyer's consultation. It was over Zoom, and it was another Compass referral. And I gave you the story of the Compass referral that wasn't so great. And I'm like, I'm doing this to kind of figure it out, like if we're a good match. But I got another one, and this is how the majority of the referrals come in, is they're out of state, they're in Chicago, they want to rely on me. We had an hour and 15-minute buyer consultation, solid. Talked about NAR, solid. They totally agree, solid. Zero,
Nice.
zero. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And they're like, yeah, I want someone like you representing me. And I was so passionate about representing them. One thing I do say is I don't work with more than 10 active buyers at any given time. You can say your number or whatever it is, but part of my pitch is I just don't. If with buyers, my motivation will always meet your motivation. If I'm working with 10 motivated buyers, I'm not going to take on any more because I just can't handle it. You can expect from me top level service, commitment, all of that. I am working, I'm working. You are a priority. So you are my top 10. And I say that, like, do you want to be part of my top 10 or not? And so a lot of buyers want to be part of my top 10. Would you want to be part of my top 10?
I was.
So anyway, I like to shift the gears and part of the biggest thing from the NAR conversations is I like to shift the gears where the buyer's representative, where before maybe they were guided by the clients or they have to do this, they're to where like, hey, listen, I'm going to be really specific of who I'm going to work with. Because guess what? I'm going to give you everything. Bettina, Crystal, I'm going to give you everything. And, we're going to get accomplished exactly what we talked about. And that's why I can't work with more than 10 people because I'm committed. And so that's my conversation is I turn the tables on the profession of the buyer's representative. Stand proud with what you do. So anyway, off my soapbox. Excellent, guys. 12:56. Any ahas? Let's do quick ahas. Mache.
On the spot. That my aha is when you said when you take that moral compass or ethical compass and you say what's best for my seller. I got to show that damn property.
Yeah,
you
you
know.
do. You do.
Yeah.
Yep. Who do you work for? There's a lot of different things, but just keep focused. Like, what do they call it? That's your North Star, right? Monchak, that's your North Star. Like you work for the seller. So
Yeah.
put yourself in the seller's standpoint. Level 3 listening. Bettina, give me one highlight or insight.
Just keep going and just keep positioning yourself to make those conversations and not be afraid to to market yourself as being exclusive like we talked about and like that conversation that you had with your buyer earlier today. If it's meant to be, then it's meant to be. If not, then don't force it, just like anything else in life. So
Awesome. Amen, sister. And here's the other thing I would say is that the more we have the conversations, like the more confidence we have. and ourself and our capabilities. So have those conversations and don't be afraid because they get easier. And I know I come across on this call as very confident and stuff, but the truth is I've had a lot of conversations. Do you know us do you know what the side effects of me coaching part of the side effects of me coaching and wanting to be a coach like has? Do you know what that is I say it all the time. Like I keep sharp my scripts and my dialogues and stuff because I'm helping other people. When you help other people, you can get better at that. Crystal, are you able to take away any insights today?
No, I thought the meeting was all great, but you literally just, when you just summed it up, keep talking about it. That's, for me, that's where I just keep talking about it, whether it's with myself or
Yep.
with somebody else in my house, just to keep familiar, because it hasn't been a normal practice and now it
Yeah,
is, so just so it's comfortable.
that's
So
awesome.
but the whole meeting was great.
That's awesome, Crystal. And you know what's so funny is anything that we fear or that we're uncomfortable or things that are unusual to us, repetition solves all that. Like repetition of anything takes away fear. If there's something that you're afraid of in any aspect of your life, if you do it over and over again, guess what? You have the control and the power to take that fear away. That is powerful. And it comes with the conversations as well. You get better with them and you just feel good. And remember, our words are 7% of our communication. 7% communication is our words. 55% is our body language. And 38% is our tonality, how we talk. So over the phone, we have 38% tonality and 7% words. Face to face, we have 100% communication. So I want you to know that it's not just the words you speak, but it's how you speak them. And what we're working on and what my dream and vision for First Agent Hub is to be able to encapsulate like that 38% tonality, like the mindset, the confidence behind the conversations. And make no mistake, conversations is the number one tool of our industry. Sherry, we're going to end with you. A big takeaway or an insight that you'd like to share.
I liked Matchek's, like redirecting their focus. I think that's really important,
Oh, smart.
it- you know, I don't want to say to keep them from majoring in minors, but like compensation is a big thing, but getting them excited about properties and focusing them on that is really what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That's awesome, Sherry. And then also getting them excited about properties for what? For why? Always redirecting clients to what their end goal is. Like the people I talked to yesterday, the great couple from Chicago is like, this is their next 15-year house. Their kids are young. Like, it's a big move. Like their
Mhm.
dream of having a big house where all the other kids in the neighborhood come over and they can go in the pool and all that kind of take the golf cart to, the community center and stuff like that's the dream. So I always direct everything back to what's important to them. Guys, I want to say thank you so much for being part of this.